Believing in God without the church, a deep thought or just intellectual laziness? Does this phrase actually make sense? I believe in God, but not in the church. A phrase that sounds intelligent, balanced, even modern. But if we break it down, it's like saying, I love Harry Potter, but I hate books. Where did you even get the idea of God if not from the church? Welcome to 277 Broadcast, where we're going to dismantle this postmodern phrase that tries to sound deep, but is actually just an excuse to avoid thinking too hard about the subject. Rejecting the church while using its concept of God. Most people who say this still believe in the version of God that the church defines. Monotheistic, why not polytheistic like in the past? Omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, exactly as Christian theology describes. Loving, just, rewarding or punishing based on his will. If you don't believe in the church, why does your concept of God still match its teachings? And what happens when you ask people to define God? Some try to sound scientific and say, God is energy. But they have no idea what energy actually means. Others say, God is the creator of the universe. But so were the Egyptian, Greek, Norse and Phoenician gods. And none of them needed to be omnipotent, omniscient or omnipresent to do it. So why does this God have to be? Saying, I believe in God, but not in the church, is just an attempt to escape organized religion, but without realizing it, people are still trapped in its way of thinking. Does everyone just believe in what suits them? If people reject the church but still believe in God, then who defines what God is? Can anyone create their own custom version? If everyone can believe whatever they want, what makes one version better than another? If a pedophile priest, a corrupt politician, a murderer, and a thief all have their own version of God, why is yours any better? Of course, you will resort to violence. A predator can justify his actions by saying, God forgives me. Someone who became a billionaire through financial fraud could say, God blessed me with wealth. A murderer might believe God told me to do it. If every version of God is valid, how do we decide which ones are true and which ones aren't? If God is just a personal construct, then it's nothing more than a reflection of what people want to believe. God is love. Except when you read the Old Testament and history. Genocides on divine command. Amalekites, Canaanites, pick your favorite. Slavery with a celestial stamp of approval, with handy rules on how to beat them humanely. Global annihilation via flood because, tough love. Immediate death for minor infractions. Touch the wrong sacred object. Zap. Look back at a city. Boom. Pillar of salt. And let's not even get started on history. Crusades, inquisitions, witch hunts, colonialist, soul-saving missions. All done in his name, of course. Because nothing says divine love like mass torture. So if you reject the church's God but still believe in a fluffy, all-accepting deity, where exactly are you getting that version from? The Bible? No, that one's full of smiting. History? Nope, just a bloodbath. Your feelings? Ding, ding, ding. At the end of the day, this loving God is just a DIY deity tailored to modern comfort. No plagues, no brimstone, just a celestial therapist who vibes with your personal ethics, which ironically makes it even less credible than organized religion. So, if you just believe in what feels right, how is that not just pure imagination? At the end of the day, it's a belief system built on personal convenience, not solid reasoning. People often believe in God to justify morality. Surveys show that 45% of people believe that without God, morality wouldn't exist. But history proves the opposite. If morality depends on God, then why have some of humanity's worst crimes been committed in his name? Thus, morality doesn't come from God, it comes from evolution and social coexistence. If God were necessary for morality, history would be a lot less violent. Basing life on something unprovable creates a problem. Believers often say, God can't be understood with human logic. But if that's true, then why build an entire system for 8 billion people based on him? If his existence can't be proven, why should we follow his supposed laws? If everything depends on faith, then does that mean every version of God is equally valid? How do you organize society around something that is intangible? Hence, if religion organizes the world around the unquestionable, then it will always be violent. Because anyone who questions the belief is automatically a threat. And history has already shown us what happens to those who challenge dogma. What's the alternative? If all of this is true, what's left? Accepting that humans are capable of both the best and the worst. Focusing on understanding our consciousness and existence without relying on myths. Taking responsibility for our actions instead of justifying them through an invisible entity. The phrase, "I believe in God but not in the church," sounds deep, but in the end, it's just a way to keep believing without facing uncomfortable questions. If you believe in God but define him however you want, how is that any different from a religious fanatic doing the exact same thing? Subscribe to 277 Broadcast. And remember, saying "I believe in God but not in the church" is like saying "I respect Noah, but I think drowning the entire world was a bit much." Do you see the paradox? One does not exist without the other.